This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by ServiceNow and Carahsoft. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, an ancient Greek inspiration for AI in government, building a control tower for your agency's AI efforts, and the Treasury's big fraud-fighting tool scales up. Welcome to Fed Gov Today in Washington, D.C., on YouTube, and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. The Interior Department's path to AI transformation includes 4 directives from the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. One of the tools the department will use on that path is called the Parthenon Framework. John Montel is Associate Chief Information Officer at Interior. John, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
How did you get from an ancient Greek building to a framework for artificial intelligence implementation?
Yeah, it's interesting. We needed a model that would take our business, how we do business today, and streamline it for AI. So rapid implementation, rapid agile approaches to how we want to implement technologies and how we want to convert legacy technologies to something adventurous as AI today or agentic AI tomorrow. So the Parthenon really takes all the pieces that government contracting, security, information technology, training, communications, logistics, compresses it into a rapid, agile business model that we can then implement these technologies with.
When you go out and talk about this, you tell folks that the core concept of this is that AI is only as good as the data it consumes.
Correct.
Data is obviously then a very important part of this framework too.
You're right, and preparing for that data is even more critical. Having all the communications and all the pieces, the policies, the rules and regulations understood and in place before you start to tackle your data is a critical part of that.
What did you have to do at Interior before, when you started on this journey, to get yourself ready to be in that position?
Yeah, we have to sit down with our key stakeholders. We have to sit down with our mission folks, both on the front line and the administrative executives on the back end. We have to understand what the goals and objectives are. And we need to separate what it is that we need and what it is that we want. The things that we want to tackle down the road. But there are immediate things that we need to address a lot of the AI challenges that we're facing. So working with those entities gives us that opportunity to, again, rapidly agile develop and implement.
I imagine you're not just doing that on the agency level either. It's not just horizontal, it's also vertical as you're working with organizations in the bureaus and sub-agencies.
Absolutely. Also with the Office of the Chief Information Officer and across organizational entities and other agencies as well, like Department of Justice and the Hill as well.
Who are your main partners within Interior in making sure this gets done right? Not just in OCIO, but all across the organization.
Well, beyond the business owners is mostly the Office of the Chief Information Officer, making sure that we're aligning with the strategies that they have, especially when it comes to technology and its innovation. You're looking at an organization of 75,000 employees, 1,100 plus systems, most of them level 1 or level 2 systems. So they're mission critical systems, and making sure that the paths that we're choosing and the technologies that we're adopting align with those strategies.
How fine do you have to slice it to analyze those systems to determine whether they're ready to be included, whether they're ready to be onboarded into this system?
That's a good question. Again, I think it comes down to you can change any system. It's really understanding what you need to change and how you need to change it. And that's really working with those key stakeholders.
Are there also potential ramifications for how you change a system? Maybe you can change it this way and it'll work well. Change it this way and you don't get what you want.
Yeah, you have to get to KPIs, you have to get to risk, you have to measure these things as you go along. And in technologies like artificial intelligence, these are also very rapidly moving. So dashboarding becomes very critical, and instant information that you can get on a day-to-day basis.
What are you looking at on those dashboards? What do you want to know about what's going on?
My KPIs, my key performance indicators, and what the risk levels are when it comes to data, cybersecurity, information management, things of that nature.
Here's how you frame this when you go out and talk about it. You're working on a transition from what you call a high-friction manual interface to an AI-ready ecosystem, eliminating click fatigue of legacy systems and empowering users with proactive intelligence. How did you go about analyzing what you had to determine what the delta was between what you had and that vision of the AI-ready ecosystem?
Yeah, I think if you look at where the administration is going and that kind of that middle piece that was mostly manual, mostly input, output, print out, print up kind of technologies, and really looking to automate that, I think it's very easy to detect that, to see that. The challenge is really working with leadership to let them know that you can do it while the bus is moving down the road. Right? You're changing the tires, you're making sure that mission can still continue. So developing parallel artificial intelligence systems that have this business model that can then transition rapidly. And to the end user, it looks the same, it feels the same, it's just better automated and more in tune with what their mission objectives are.
If I read between the lines of what you're telling me, you're confirming what I'm hearing from a lot of other folks in a lot of other agencies, and that is that AI is no longer something that you must consider the infrastructure of your agency for. It's becoming part of the infrastructure of the way the agency does business. Am I pulling the right thing out
Absolutely, of that? Absolutely. Like going from the telephone to the cell phone. Yep.
Yep.
Integral part.
Yeah. And what's that mean for the workforce and how you're educating them about what the capabilities are that they have now available to them?
Yeah, this is something we face a lot. Is the human in the loop is one thing, right? Making sure that the people who run mission have a say in how artificial intelligence is making decisions or what it's doing, so they're involved. But it also leads to education and training and letting employees know that we don't want to get rid of them, we want to actually elevate them. We want to teach them about data and information management, because that's where we're going. We're going into large-scale information management, a lot like a local library if you want to see trends analysis and predictive analytics for business missions.
So to the point of the Parthenon, the titling of it, you said recently, AI isn't just a roof, it requires structural pillars and a solid base to stay upright. What are some of the pillars and some of that structure that support that roof?
Yeah, so if I'm developing an artificial intelligence system, if I'm going to redesign a program today, I'm not going to historically type up external procedures or external training and have somebody go here to do this and go to that. I want to include everything into that artificial intelligence framework. So where the Parthenon pillars do it, it lets me take communications as chatbots or as notices coming out, lets me take education and training, making it like you're ordering a pizza, like it's simple and straightforward. Putting in the policies and procedures so somebody doesn't have to go and look to see, it's built into the intelligence. Having it align with the Code of Federal Regulations, which is critical in the federal government, so you can use that as a baseline for that artificial intelligence workflow. And by doing those things, you're actually helping the employee transition from what they used to do into this more of a mission-oriented data management environment.
And to pull on your analogy a little bit, and I hope I'm not oversimplifying this to the point of silliness, but one of the things people like about ordering a pizza now is you can track it online and you can see where it is. Is that something that's also a capability?
Absolutely. Not only do you want to see when it's being made, but I also want to see when it's being delivered, right? Which is critical. We all want that today. Uber is another great example. I want to know when my car is coming. It's the same thing with the business I want to do with the government and the citizens. I want to know where my taxes are. I want to know when information is coming to me and have that ability to interact with my government, and that's what this would provide.
You anticipated my next question, which is what are the customer experience elements that you're considering as you're building these things, and what are the interactivities that you're considering as far as the way that your folks inside the agency will use them, maybe rethinking business processes and so on?
I think what the Parthenon does is it allows us to develop applications and business models for those applications that are like the tools we use in our private life. Right? As we're banking, as we see new features show up and have that interactiveness, to be able to chat with the respondent on the other side, on the government side, if I'm looking for a case or researching something, be able to have that move to a phone, just like we do if we're using a personal application. So I think those technologies we want to have available today. And there's no reason why we shouldn't, right?
We have about a minute left. How do you mark or measure the progress that you're making using the Parthenon framework to make sure you're staying on track, or maybe you have to redirect it a little bit?
Yeah, I think the model is very well proven over the years. It's come to a point where we're able to not only meet our fiscal obligations, but we're also to have a very high TCO or a very high cost-benefit analysis report. Our risks are low, our risks are green, our cyber is green, our infrastructure is green, and we're actually able to rapidly agile more and more products.
It's great to have you on the program,
I
Ron. Thanks for
appreciate you
coming
having
on
me.
to talk about it.
Thank you so much.
You can read more about the Parthenon Framework on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. A reminder, Fed Gov Today TV's moving to 10 a.m. starting this week. If you record the show to watch later, make sure you change your record time to 10 a.m. every Sunday morning starting this week. Up next, building a control tower for your agency's AI efforts. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. The new federal government AI use case inventory shows an explosion in instances of AI use across government. One example is the Department of Health and Human Services. Its AI inventory is up 64% over last year's inventory. Geoff Browning's Director of Global Government Affairs and Public Policy at ServiceNow. Geoff, welcome. Thanks for being on the program. You recently proposed what you call an AI control tower. What would that tower control, Geoff?
Sure. Well, I think in our experience across the public and private sectors, the organizations that get this right aren't necessarily the ones that move the fastest. They're the ones that get governance right first and then scale. And I think there are two parts to that. One is thinking through some difficult questions, and then two is operationalizing your answers to those questions. So on the first side, what can it touch? What can it not touch? What types of cases always default to a human? What's the role of the human? How is that managed over time? How do you track these assets all the way from their ingest through their output? And we were talking earlier about how AI is only as good as the data it consumes, is becoming part of the infrastructure, needs to comport with federal laws and requirements. At the end of the day, I think agencies, just like Fortune 500s, need to think through those questions and come to those decisions. Then vendors can come in and help. That can be through shared responsibility models, or it can be through things like our AI control tower, which has pre-built functionality, for example, to measure maturity against things like the NIST risk management framework.
It strikes me that in answering a series of questions like you just asked, one of the challenges might be getting agencies to answer their own questions honestly. Is that something that you've seen? And if so, where do agencies usually go wrong in understanding where they are?
Well, I think one thing we've seen that's positive from the administration is kind of building upon this requirement to not only have an inventory of use cases, but then look at it and make a judgment of which ones are deemed to be at higher risk, and then take certain mitigating steps for those risks. Now, obviously, that's difficult, and it sort of varies from use case to use case. But I know, and I'm sure you do too, a lot of people who are working really hard at agencies to do this really well and facing those difficult questions. And I think one of the most fun things about my job is helping to support that.
What do you find when you talk to those people that is helpful for them to reshape, re-educate, retrain their workforces to be able to do this kind of work and to be prepared for the changes that are coming?
On the technical side, they want to see short time to value, but of course a part of that is you need skills, especially for emergent technologies. And one thing that we found across the private and public sectors, so we did a skills forecast where we worked with Pearson. We looked globally at about 10 million job postings, 3,400 job types or so across dozens of technology types, and forecasted what the skills needs will be. And we forecast a sharp increase in the need for AI governance skills for data stewardship, auditing, all of those things. And I think that agencies are definitely seeing that need in their workforces. And one of the good things about ServiceNow is that we partner with about 100 universities globally to provide those skills to the private sector. And we make all that curriculum available for free to every one of our federal customers. So if anyone's interested in getting a certification, in learning about something that aligns to what their agency needs, if they're a ServiceNow customer, they already have access to that.
One of the things that we talked about before we went on the air, and a term that you use is the importance of understanding and managing assets in the AI realm. What's that mean? What's an AI asset exactly, and how does an organization maximize it?
Sure. Well, maybe it makes sense to, I would say, start with software and hardware assets and then progress to AI. So obviously we have the Megabyte Act, which Congress passed, requires agencies to have an accurate inventory of the software they own and use automated tools to populate that inventory. Years later, it's been really difficult to implement that, and not for lack of trying. Maybe there's even an argument that Congress could pass a CIO Act to go along with the CFO Act. But for where we are now, it's critical to know what software and hardware are on your network, how they're configured, to be using automated tools to keep that up to date. And the configuration management piece here is critical for things like vulnerability response. When you introduce AI to that, all those dependencies become more tricky. And when you introduce agentic AI to it, the governance only becomes more important, because you may have different models, dependencies, and data flows from vendors. And that's one of the great things about the technology I get to work with every day at ServiceNow, is that we have robust integrations with hundreds of other technologies. Can run on Microsoft, GCP, or AWS, and we're able to sort of track a lot of those assets through their life cycles, regardless of who provides the model.
We have about 30 seconds left. What's around the corner that agencies should be thinking about? Not that they need to worry about today, but they might have to 6 months from now, a year from now, 18 months from now?
That's a really good question, and the first answer that comes to mind is quantifying the outputs that you're getting and the value that you're getting. Testing, evaluation, validation, verification are important, and I think the vendors who you're working with should hopefully be able to articulate that value, sometimes even using your own data, if it's allowed, to tell you what value you can expect. And I think, putting the money in on the front end is important, but making sure you're getting it back on the back end is critical, and that's, I think, also a strong suit for ServiceNow.
Geoff, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me today.
Honor and a privilege. Thank you.
You can read more about AI deployment across government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, Treasury's big fraud fighting tool scales up. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in just a moment.
The other thing, through all of this, you can't be afraid to try. We have to constantly innovate, fail fast, pick ourselves up when the project wasn't that great, and not, I always use the term that one of my mentors used when I worked for him, stop admiring the problem. Try something, try and solve it. It's okay if it doesn't work. Try something else. And I think we're seeing more and more of that on the federal side to move a lot faster.
We look at new AI capabilities. A rule of thumb when my team's working on a new AI capability, a new tool, if you can't get to 80% in 20 minutes, maybe you want to move on. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There are a lot of low-risk things that can be done that have high value, high efficacy, reducing the cost for defenders, increasing the cost for attackers, really winning that economic warfare of cybersecurity.
Welcome back to Treasury Department's in the final year of a pilot program in collaboration with the Social Security Administration. Treasury is using SSA's Death Master File data in its Do Not Pay database. Justin Marsico, Assistant Commissioner of the Bureau of the Fiscal Service at Treasury, tells Fed Gov Today's George Jackson what makes up the Do Not Pay list and how any agency can use it.
Essentially, Do Not Pay is a collection of 23 data sources and risk analytics that work with those data sources that let agencies and states know that recipients, awardees, beneficiaries who they are about to make awards to or that they already have awards to may be at a high risk of improper payments or potential fraud.
You mentioned a couple of those words. I'm going to key in and just sort of foot stomp for our audience's benefit. Prevent, detect, and recover. You have some relatively recent data on this, fiscal year 25. What did you find in that data?
So the top priority that we have in our office is doing exactly what you just said. It is preventing, detecting, and recovering improper payments and suspected fraud. And we have a methodology that we use to measure our success in doing that, and we have a goal that we've set for how much improper payments and fraud we're actually able to prevent, detect, and recover. And in FY25, we have just calculated that the results of our work in Do Not Pay and other programs at Treasury have reached $11.7 billion for the year. The reason that that's notable is that it is a 63% increase
Wow.
over the amount that we reported last year and the highest that we have ever reported as a program. We had $7.2 billion in FY24 and again 11.7 in FY25. A lot of this is driven by the focus on new types of products that we're delivering to customers and just increased usage that we have by existing customers. And I'll give you one example of this. Just inside the Do Not Pay system itself, in FY25, our customers pinged our data sources and our analytics 614 million times, meaning that they are searching for entities through our API, they're using our search interface, or they're sending us bulk files and we're screening them. So that's 614 million screenings that we did for agencies and states is a 2x increase over what we did last
Wow.
year. So that's what's driving a lot of the increase in the value that we're creating.
Is that a management push? Is that better technology? And I'm asking specifically about the increased usage. I understand the product side, but how do you get out there and increase usage? What goes into that?
So I'll tell you right now, what we've identified is what we've done is tried to start with the problem that we're fighting. And I've been working this role for about a year, and when you get into the world of improper payment and anti-fraud, you know that the numbers that we are fighting government-wide are quite significant. A couple years ago, GAO produced a report saying that on an annual basis, the government loses between $200 billion and $500 billion per year. Separately from that, the government reports improper payments totals on an annual basis, and those are north of $150 billion per year. So we're starting with the scale of the problem and trying to make sure that we have solutions that can scale and can really address the problem. And we've identified two areas that we're trying to focus on right now. One is just driving increased usage of Do Not Pay amongst agencies. And we have been working with OMB on streamlining the process for agencies to get access to Do Not Pay and use it. And the second priority that we have is making sure that we have sufficient data sources to actually address the root causes of fraud and improper payments across the government. There are some areas where we have really solid coverage today. One example is death. If an agency is making a payment to a dead person, there's really only two reasons I think that that's happening. One is that they're legally obligated to do it, such as in the case of a savings bond being paid to an estate. The other case is they're just not using Do Not Pay. We have 7 data sources on death and really good coverage. But there are other areas, other root causes of improper payments and fraud where we don't have great coverage, and we need to focus on getting access to those data sources, getting them into Do Not Pay, getting agencies to use them on a regular basis.
One of those sources, and you referenced it sort of overtly, is this death master file maintained for a long time exclusively by the Social Security Administration. BFS got access to that in 2023, I think, 3-year pilot program. You were saying before we went on the air, Justin, you've got some news to make relative to that today.
So we have, like you said, we got access, Congress gave us access for 3 years to pilot the use of the death master file, which is the most complete and authoritative source of death data that there is in America. And we conducted the pilot in partnership with Social Security. We showed really good results from that, hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud and improper payments that we can prevent. And we worked with Congress on showing them the results of that. And as a result of the successful pilot, Congress, both houses of Congress recently passed S269, which gives Treasury the permanent authority to have access to the death master file.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that we're going to see the president signing that legislation into law, and it'll make it official for us to get access to the death master file on a permanent basis. This is not the end of the story for us, though. There are other data sources that we know will provide good results in preventing fraud and improper payments, but we need the legislative authority to get access to them. I'll just give you like one quick example of that. So there's a data source that's produced by the Social Security Administration also. It's called Numident, and it is the authoritative record of Social Security numbers that are issued by SSA. When we get Social Security numbers on a payment file, we think that we should be able to screen those to understand if those are real Social Security numbers. In many cases, people are using synthetic Social Security numbers as a way to get access to funds that they're not entitled to. And there are definitely instances that we've seen of people trying to perpetuate fraud to do that. If we get access to this data source, we will be able to detect if any Social Security number is true and issued by the Social Security Administration or if it hasn't been. And we are actually in the process of designating this data source in Do Not Pay, which will allow us to use it. But the challenge that we have is that some statutory restrictions will keep us from fully using it across all payments and all programs. So we're hoping that Congress will take this up and help us to get additional legislative authority so that we'll be able to fully leverage this data source, so we know anytime there's an SSN present, we are authorized to check to make sure that it's real and that it's not being used in pursuit of fraud.
You can read more about the Do Not Pay list on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
What's different today is software as a service, where you get a system that's delivered out of the box to you without any bolt-ons. Your data is unified and it's all in one place, so that you no longer have to ask for data and wait on a spreadsheet, right? It's right there, right at your fingertips.
Making data integrate and actually work for the workforce, as opposed to data helping just the technical side of business, is fundamentally a different shift. And that's absolutely the power of what I think we're talking about today.
Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, next Monday, March 9th, is a big Cyber Day in Washington. In the morning, the Reagan Building is the site of the GovRamp Symposium. Federal, state, and local cyber leaders from across the country will join a half-day discussion on innovation in security across government. The third annual Billington State and Local Cybersecurity Summit opens later that day. It's at the Reagan Building, too. It runs through Wednesday, March 11th. You can read more about both events and register at stategovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at our new time, 10 a.m. If you record the show, make sure you set your recorder for 10 a.m. next Sunday morning and every Sunday morning. Thanks for watching. I'm Francis Rose. Have a great week.